don't think I've ever lived in a world of I have to. I live in the world of I get to.
At 19, Jane Roos was a force on the track. The kind of athlete who made coaches lean forward because they knew they were watching a future Olympian. And her life was built on speed, discipline, and the belief that the world was waiting for her performance. Then came the night that her life changed in a split second. One moment she was in a car with her best friend, and the next, her world turned upside down.
On the way back, there's just one piece of the highway where she nodded off like a blink of an eye.
Metal twisted, time slowed, and when the wreckage settled, Jane had survived, but her best friend did not. But Jane's spine was broken, her Olympic dreams were shattered, and the life she expected to live had vanished in an instant.
I lost everything. I lost my best friend. I lost my modeling career. I lost my track career. I lost access to my track coaches, to that group of people.
Jane had survivor guilt, physical pain, 2 back operations, a long recovery in a hospital bed. Most people would have asked themselves why this happened. But Jane asked herself a different question. Why am I still here?
So I got very mindful about what my thoughts were because I felt so much gratitude to be alive.
That question and the manner that she answered it became her purpose.
I really started to think about, I'm going to live a life of service. I'm going to live this life where I'm going to help people succeed.
She saw that the athletes she once trained with were struggling. Many were going into debt just to compete. Jane decided she would not watch another dream fall apart. And from that hospital bed, she started raising money.
You know how most people live out of love and fear? I never worry about the how, ever.
No experience, no contacts, no reason to believe anyone would listen. Only a purpose that burned hotter than her fear. That purpose became the Canadian Athletes Now Fund, a fund that has raised more than $50 million and helps support most of Canada's Olympic and Paralympic athletes. Jane claimed a new dream by helping others chase their own. This is a story about lost purpose and the courage to keep moving when everything stops.
I feel like the car accident was probably the greatest gift. I can say that now. I don't fear.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast. And ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated.
Jane Roos, welcome to Chatter That Matters.
Thanks for having me.
So I shouldn't use the word excited about it because there's so much tragedy as part of your story, but at the end of it, there's this incredible triumph. So we're going to try to do justice to both. And maybe you can take me back to Jane Roos before your life changed in an instant when you were seen as a future Olympian. Just tell me a little bit about what was going on in your mind and your parents' life and everything that kind of set you up for the fact that you were looking at podiums, not just as a voyeur, but as someone that you hoped would one day stand on one.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the woods of Quebec, and I feel like at a very early age, like grade 4, Mr. Guitar was my track coach, and I just excelled in sports. I grew up around all boys, so in order to keep up, you had to, be fast or, catch up all the time. So I think I spent a lot of my youth catching up to the boys. My parents, we lived on a lake, a lot of freedom, a lot of outdoors living, just magical. My grandmother also had her own lake. My grandfather was a hockey coach at Clarkson, and he was a really big athlete. And both my other grandparents were artists. In grade 5, I think I drew a picture of the Queen and won this contest. And so art and sport really were always intertwined in my life. And when we moved to Ottawa, very early on, I was at a track club, just excelled in sport. Like I was just an athlete, but also an entrepreneur, very creative that way. All my great aunts were entrepreneurs. Pretty much my entire family has always been very entrepreneurial. And I was modeling at the time and Miss Teen Ottawa. And I think I was just that middle child that wanted to try everything, very feisty, really competitive too, like basketball. Everything I did, I wanted to be great at.
Well, I sat on a board of my daughter's schools when they were in high school, and I learned how math and music belong together, which I never thought. I thought, one was a very organized thought where music was much more creative. What do you think you brought when you're this sort of fusion of art, athletics, entrepreneurship? What did you learn from each that you think helped shape who Jane was?
I think just being very creative, but also, I think in the early days with art and athletics and entrepreneurship, you're in the driver's seat. If I wanted to go to practice, it was my choice. But every time I went to practice, I would be better. And I think I got that hard work, really showing up daily, was going to get me where I wanted to go. But I also think with art, it was an escape for me. I felt a lot of pressure with sport, which I loved. And same as entrepreneurship. I love creating. I like creating something from nothing. Always very curious. I think that's what I think they all gave me, was this curiosity of like, how can I be better? What could I do? Just always kept pushing the bar higher.
You sound like you must have been an exhausting child to be around, though.
It was.
Your parents had signed up for something quite easy to deal with. Give her a book and she'll be fine. I could just see you bouncing off of every wall. But I hate to use this as a bridge, but you talk about the driver's seat. And I think it's important that this young lady who's firing on all cylinders, who has, entrepreneurship and creativity and looking at the Olympics and her future, and then you're in a horrific car accident.
That day, it was just one of those ordinary days. I came home from the track and my best friend, her name was Tina, lived around the corner. We played basketball together in high school and on the all-star team together. We were both in grade 13. So it was that time of your life where you're just kind of ending and a whole new chapter is about to begin. And we were driving her parents to the airport in Montreal. They were going on a holiday. It was funny because she called me, landlines back then, and she called and I just got back from track and my mom's like, it's Tina. She wants you to drive to the airport with her in Montreal. And every part of me was like, no, I don't want to go because I just got back, but I didn't want to drive by herself. So off we went and we dropped her parents off at the airport, went to Montreal for dinner. On the way back, there's just one piece of the highway where she nodded off like a blink of an eye. And we went off the cliff. I remember she was 6'3". She died from the accident. But I was one of those moments where they say that you go past that. Like I literally got out of the car, went to get help. And there was an older couple about, 500 meters away that had just put a light on, like an outdoor light. And so when I got to their door, they were kind of squabbling, saying, I knew I heard something. And I'm standing there. And I think it was very horrific how I looked. See, it's a good thing we put the light on. I'm like, okay, can you just call these numbers, please? And can we get some help? It was the worst day of my life.
I never even thought about it, but the fact that she was driving her parents to the airport, that must be one of the most horrific things they had to live with the rest of their life.
Well, and worse than that, she was an only child.
Oh. You described getting out of the car and getting help. You had a broken back.
Well, my back wasn't like fully broken, but it was really badly injured, and I was injured, and I feel like they say that comes that time where you just go past what you're capable of. You just go into that mode. After they called for help, I went back to the car. I don't remember much after that, except for the paramedics were like, we're going to just take you now. Like, we're getting you. And I remember just pleading with them to take her. Like I said, she's worse than me. Take her. And later on, I had found out that she had passed in between me leaving the car and coming back. When you're a survivor of an accident, especially living in Ottawa, everywhere I went, I was reminded of it. And definitely before this part of my life, no one ever really felt sorry for me. And then now everybody was feeling sorry for me. And I wasn't equipped for that. So I definitely hit rock bottom. I didn't have the skills or the tools because I lost everything. I lost my best friend. I lost my modeling career. I lost my track career. I lost access to my track coaches, to that group of people, because everyone didn't know what to do around me.
What advice can you give to others when something happens, when their life changes in a split second, and even though it's awkward for the people in their universe, so that individual doesn't feel abandoned?
Yeah, I think the challenge with people is it makes people uncomfortable, but it's okay to be uncomfortable. And I think sometimes we shy away from that. We get in our heads and make stories like, oh, I wonder what they're thinking, when you could just ask. Recently, there was a bad accident near where I live with 3 people in it, and one of the boys died, and they all played on the same volleyball team. It was a university volleyball team. I reached out to the coach and I just said, can I come talk to them right now where it's really, really raw? And it was interesting because one of the players was supposed to be, he was walking to the car and then he turned around and thought, oh, I'm going to go do physio. And he didn't get in the car. So when I was talking to him, I could just watch his facial expressions. And I said, what is it that you're going through right now? And in his mind, there was this piece that, well, maybe if I got in the car and slowed down, they waited for me, then they wouldn't have been at the stop sign when the car hit them. And I think the challenge with people, when you're around people that have gone through such tragedy, is they do want to talk about it. But for me, I was lost for about 3 years and dealing with all the injuries. But at the same time, it was like Andy Higgins. He was the head coach of the University of Toronto Track and Field Club. And he called me literally out of the blue and said, I've heard some things that you're not thriving right now. So do you think you want to come to U of T? And I know you'll never run for the university, but why don't you come to a different environment? That call gave me a different path. And same with Dr. Peter Jensen. He's a sports psychologist. And I was out at an event and he's like, I don't think you're doing so well. Do you want to talk about it? When you can check in with people, like I really had to reinvent myself because everything I knew was gone. And I don't think people around you want to talk a lot about death. So I actually talk with people who are going through those types of experiences. It's one of the things I not love to do, but I feel like I can share with people, this is really tough and it's horrible.
Jane, you talk about this dark period and then a phone call and you go to UFT, you have to have a second back surgery. And the combination of these mentors, maybe some boredom in the hospital, but it leads you to thinking that there might be something I can do for athletes. So tell me how that unfolded.
I feel like the car accident was probably the greatest gift. I can say that now. I don't fear. You know how most people live out of love and fear? I never worry about the how, ever. So when I was in the hospital for my second back operation, and I got the nurses involved and we started faxing companies. And I said, I don't know what I'm raising money for, but it will be for something great, I'm sure. And like, it's unheard of now to be not like, everyone worries about their pitch and how they word it. I was just faxing companies. And I got out the night before and I had a fundraiser. It was called the Bohemian Cafe on Pears in Toronto. And I raised $40,000. And even in that moment, I still wasn't sure what I was going to do with this money. I just wanted to do something good with my time. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to help a few athletes. So in the very, very beginning, recovering from back surgery, I had athletes and their parents, people showing up at my door, giving me receipts. I'd reimburse them. And word spread quickly that there's this woman handing out money. And then I started doing more events. And then, like everything, people just started showing up. Taxi Paul Lavoie showed up and he said, tell me more about what you're doing. And then this lady who worked at Xerox, she's like, can I do something like, what would you need? I'm like, well, why don't we make these? So we created these Toonie for 2000 cans and asked people to donate to support the athletes going to the 2000 Olympics. Well, the woman from Xerox, Carolyn Mashrin was her name, gave me 1,000 cans. I'm like, I had boxes of these cans and it was like Toonie for 2000. And I think the day at Cadillac Fairview, we used 80. And then I thought, okay, I have 900 and some cans. So why don't I offer them to athletes that they can come to my house and get 10 each and whatever money they get in their cans is theirs. Like give them a marketing tool to help them. And so in the very early days, it was called See You in Sydney, See You in Salt Lake. And going into 2003, James Parks was this lawyer who I met, and he was kind of, like, I don't know if you'll get charitable status, but walk me through this. We got charitable status. And then going into those Athens games, we funded 244 of the 266. And Can Fund, it's now called Can Fund. I wanted to rebrand, and David Kincaid and Level 5, they rebranded for us. So people have come into my life, I feel like, who've been very, very helpful, and the timing has been great. Now, since Athens to the Paris Olympics, we've now funded 82% of all the athletes who compete for Canada, able-bodied and para. So we've now funded over 8,000 athletes.
When we return, Jane reflects on the accident, and if there was one gift in it, was to teach her never to worry about how, only why. And then we'll talk about her new initiative, Random Acts of Magic, and of course, my 3 takeaways.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman, host of Chatter That Matters. A big shout out to RBC for RBC Training Ground. Each year, thousands of Canadians are tested, and those with Olympic potential are provided the resources they need to chase their podium dreams. Find out more at rbctrainingground.ca. Owning the podium matters to our athletes, to Canadians, and to RBC.
I think what I learned really early on is no one was going to come and save me. I was super grateful to be alive. I really gravitate towards people who live in a plan A. Like, you're going to soak up this life that you get. And so I think the fact that I ended up creating a charity that supports the majority of athletes who compete for Canada because they don't have a plan B and they give everything they've got to wear the maple leaf. I think that was just intentional, I guess, in a way, like I'm going to help these people succeed.
My guest today is Jane Roos, and her life changed in an instant. A horrific car crash took the life of her best friend, broke Jane's back, and shattered her Olympic dreams. But from her hospital bed, she chose to chase a new purpose, helping other athletes go after their dreams. You used the words that the how is not part of your vocabulary. Give us that as a lesson in life, because a big part of Chatter That Matters is to provide people lessons, ideas, things that they can apply to their world. And I think there's a lot of people going, how is this happening to me? How am I in this situation? How am I without? How is it that I can't have something that others have? So tell us your strategy for taking how out of your vocabulary.
I had to really manage my thoughts because there was just a lot of, survival's guilt and just, I've got to do something extraordinary with my life because I lived and she didn't. Nobody else put that pressure on me but myself. I don't know if you've heard the expression TFAR, like your thoughts become your feelings become your actions, and your actions become your results. So I got very mindful about what my thoughts were because I felt so much gratitude to be alive. I really started to think about, I'm going to live a life of service. I'm going to live this life where I'm going to help people succeed. A lot of people live have, do, be, like I'm going to have the right job, do all these things and be happy. I had to choose to be because it was just very intentional. I got to be courageous, be happy, be intentional, be grateful. And so I started doing be, do, have. One day, for example, my husband at the time, it was my boyfriend at the time, he's also an athlete. And I said, I want more joy in my life. I want joy. And he's like, okay. And he was going down to Ashbridges Bay to train, and I was going to go for a run. And then there was a big marathon on, and it was the end of the marathon where all the people who will never run a marathon again were running. I yelled, come on, you're cheering people on. And this woman looked at me and she goes, can you help me? I'm like, what? She's like, do you run? Sure. I started running with her. I said, okay, how's it going? She was not well. I don't think I'm going to finish. And I just said to her, I'm going to ask you random questions because we're finishing this, because she wanted to quit. And then at one point I said, like, do you have a boyfriend? And she's like, yeah. Da, da, da. And I'm like, what's your middle name? She's like, my middle name's Joy. And I said, she goes, I didn't pick it. I'm like, no, I told my husband I needed more joy today. And I wanted to be Joy. And here you are. Her name was Becky Joy.
Oh, wow.
I guess I don't worry about the how. I just get myself in these situations. And, to the listeners too, people always say you're always going to have problems. So have problems worthy of your life. I do attract a lot of people who, when they're stuck, I feel, or they want to learn their why, or they want to figure out how they want to do something, because I don't go into the how. So if you came to me and said, I want to create X, I would just figure it out with you. I would never try to talk somebody out of something, ever.
Your energy is so much positivity and possibility. Is there ever times where you feel, I just want to escape to my own oasis or island? I haven't got anything to give right now? Because I have to imagine that when people come knocking on your door, they need that. How do you manage to balance that, raising money for athletes and your artistic, everything? How do you find a way to do it all?
Well, I'm a mom of 2 daughters. They ground me. I love being a mom. I love teaching them. I know they're watching me as well. So I feel like this sense of like, who do I want to show up for them as well? But for me to fill my cup, I escape when I paint. And I think most of the commissions I do that people come to me to do, now I've got a bit of a clientele that, like, I have a bit of a niche market. I do a lot of text and words, and most of the stuff that I'm doing is very meaningful for them. So I feel like I get energized by creating something that I know someone's going to love and hang on their wall. At the core of who I am as a person, I'm really grateful that people show up for me and show up for the things I'm creating. And then I want to do it for them as well. So I always tell my daughters, fail as much as you can and bet on yourself, because nobody else will. Even when I turned 50, I created this random acts of magic. I just think we're so hard on ourselves and we're hard on others. And one of the best things that someone said to me, a coach, he said, happy people evaluate themselves. Unhappy people evaluate others. And that really stuck with me, because when I get into that zone of, I wish people would do more, or why don't people do what they say? I just realign and be like, well, I don't know their story. If you had met me in my 20s, I think you'd be shocked if you met me now, because I have done a 180. And I think sometimes you shouldn't judge the people, the chapter you're meeting them in. And so when I'm with people, I don't talk to them about what could go wrong. I'm more about what could go right.
Jane, do you think a lot of that comes from the fact that you had such a horrific accident? To make a 180-degree change, most humans would need something positive or negative, quite traumatic, that is going to inspire to make that kind of move?
So because of the accident, because at that young age, my best friend, who was an only child, died and lost the privilege of everything I got to do, to be a mom, to run my own companies. Like, I think every athlete that gets funded from Can Fund has a little piece of her. Without the car accident, there would be no charity. We have life lessons that come our way. You have a choice. If I had never been in the hospital, that second back operation, I don't even know if there would be a Can Fund. But I think what got me through where I am today is I live very boldly. Every person who I meet, I'm like, what do you want? And if they say, well, I want this, I'm like, well, what are you doing to get that?
So what's this random acts of magic? You teased us with it a couple of sentences ago, but I mean, it sounds so wonderful that I need to understand what unfolds.
Well, there's random acts of kindness, right, that people do. And I'm like, but I would think random acts of magic is that one step up. So it's like, how do we show up for people? I think more than ever, we need to be community. One example would be we collected winter coats, got them all bagged and put keep warm if you need one, take one. And then down at the distillery, I hung them up all on fences and kept doing that for like a week. And then every day we'd come and replenish them. And Thanksgiving, we've always hosted Thanksgiving dinners. And I've always reached out to people and said, is there someone in your life that's alone? Maybe was going through divorce, something's happened, and they have nowhere to be on Thanksgiving. So my kids think a common thing for Thanksgiving is strangers just show up at your house and have dinner. And we would set this massive table and strangers show up. And it's always a little awkward at first, but then by the end of the night, they're like exchanging phones and hugging, and they all get to know each other. So I think random acts of magic it could be what it is for anybody, right? But for me, it seems to always be about making your community better and bringing people together.
Jane, I heard you in the media talking about the Blue Jays, and what I loved about what you had to say, it was less about what happened on the field and more about what happens in Canadians' hearts.
I think the Jays brought an entire country to celebrate, right? I think when Canada is unified and there's moments like that, because they're so rare and there's maybe so many gaps in between those days, it's almost like a vitamin for people. It gives them a sense of, we're really proud to be Canadian. I think we need reminders. I think watching our athletes compete at any Olympics is a privilege. I think watching excellence teaches people how to be excellent in their own lives. So anyway.
Jane, we've gone through a number of initiatives you're part of, but I know something that you're very proud of is Can Fund 150 Women. Not just the money that you've raised, but the fact that you're letting women athletes know that there's a lot of women cheering them on.
I noticed that most of our donors were men. I think it's because I'm really like, I don't dance. It's like, do you want a cup of coffee? Yes or no? Like, I'm not going to try to convince you, right? Like if you say, no, I don't want to support athletes, I'm like, okay, I might give you like one or two reasons why it's important, but that's it. So I created this campaign called Can Fund 150 Women. And I just think usually when you go to an event, it's $150 for a ticket. So that's all it is. It's called Can Fund 150 Women. I did the opposite. Like usually when people create, I guess, a brand, they get the sponsors, they do the launch party, blah, blah, blah. I just started asking women for $150 or more. And we now have 5,000 women. The youngest is 8. The oldest is 88. We've now funded 597 female athletes with $8,000 each. But the cool part about it is, you being a dad of daughters, we're changing the narrative. It's like women are showing up for you. So women supporting women. Like when I tell an athlete, okay, not only are you getting Can Fund, but you're actually getting Can Fund 150 Women, because women across this country are investing in you and believe in you.
Are you ever going to be satisfied with your life? Because to me, you seem to be continually doing such wonderful things. I mean, these acts of magic, the fact, instead of an athlete coming to your door when you first raised a bit of money, now you have people coming to a fence for a coat. Do you think your calling is just to keep doing what you're doing and more of it? Or do you think there'll ever be a time where you go, that was a life well spent and well served, and now I can kind of step back and let other people carry this torch?
No, it's funny. There's that quote I saw when I was at the Sydney Olympics. When I'm done, I want to be so used up that my torch is then passed on to another person. No is the answer to that question. I love every day. I feel so blessed. Like people are like, when people don't talk about their age, I'm like, I'm 55, I'll be 56. I just want to be so used up at the end of this that my daughters, the people that I've touched, feel that their life was made better because they knew me.
Did your daughters ever resent the fact that so much of their mom was shared by so many different people?
I think my kids think that this is normal. I think they think generosity and kindness and showing up for people is what everybody does. And I think that's probably been a little bit of a life lesson for them. It's maybe not the norm per se. My oldest daughter, who's super brilliant person, she's just so smart. She'll be like, you're like the mom for like 8,000 people. And then my younger daughter thinks everybody's an Olympian. Like, what are you doing with your life? You're not an Olympian. You're not an artist. What are you doing? Or an entrepreneur. But I think I show up for my kids. I think as much as I show up for others.
How spiritual are you?
I think I have a strong faith. So my dad was 67 when he passed. He had 7 strokes. And I'm the middle child, and my older brother was married and my younger sister was married. And when my dad had his 3rd stroke, I bought him a treadmill and I said, okay, Dad, 32 steps to walk me down the aisle. And when I go to his house, there was like chicken scratch, like of him counting the steps. Then I got a call from my mom saying that my dad had gone to the hospital in Ottawa and that they didn't give him more than 2 weeks to live. And so I went right away. My dad was not doing well. And I phoned my boyfriend at the time and I said, oh, this isn't going so well. He goes, let's get married. What? I go, I have to ask my dad. So my dad couldn't talk at the time because of his stroke. So a thumbs up was yes, thumbs down, maybe. And then underneath your thumb was no way. Dad, Connor wants to get married. We're going to get married here at the hospital if you approve it. And he gave me a thumbs up. We organized our wedding in like literally 8 days. We got married December 15th. We got our minister we met him at Tim Hortons. We met him online. The head nurse, Susan, was amazing. Why I'm telling you this is it's been 19 years since my dad passed. And with Tina, I feel very safe. Like I feel like they're watching out for me. I look at my dad and I think he'd be very proud of who I've become. So I have to believe there's something else there because I do find myself like talking to them or being very like, this one's for you, or I've got this, or my dad and I were super close. So I miss him all the time. But the fact that he got to be at my wedding was a dream come true.
My last question for you is, do you feel all of this happened for a reason?
Yeah, I definitely think that the worst day became the greatest lesson. I think I chose that. There's that movie Sliding Doors where she gets on the subway and then misses the subway. It's Gwyneth Paltrow and how her life changed. But at the end, it all kind of ends the way it was supposed to end. Had I not had the car accident, I probably wouldn't have met my husband. I wouldn't have gone to Toronto. There would be no charity for sure. I think when you're an athlete, you're very focused on you. But I also think because I was an athlete, because I was an artist, and because I was an entrepreneur, creating the fun from nothing, running a gallery with zero experience, becoming an artist and having hundreds and hundreds of clients, like that all was, I think, part of my DNA. But I think the accident was the greatest gift.
Jane, I always end my podcast with my 3 takeaways, and you've given me about 35. But the first one is, I loved what you said earlier, at the beginning of my life, I lived to be in the driver's seat, whether I was an athlete or an artist or an entrepreneur. But what really became apparent to me is the people that were in the passenger seats and how important they were in helping you discover who you are. The second one was just the simplest advice that you give to your daughters: fail often, but bet on yourself. Part of that conversation was also, that happy people evaluate themselves where unhappy people evaluate others. And it's really, again, comes back to this destiny is a matter of choice, not chance. Grabbing the brush, grabbing the rudder, and making things happen. And then I love where you said, I apply this concept of thoughts, having the right thoughts, give me the right feelings. The right feelings lead to the right actions, which produces the right results. And I always said to my daughters growing up, if you could only find that switch that you could turn on and immediately apply that kind of thinking, positivity versus negativity, possibility versus impossibility, certainty versus uncertainty, that simple switch, how much more profound your life would be. But the trouble is that very often today, we fall into that sense of negativity and possibility because so much of it is around us every day. Dave Kincaid suggested you come on the show, and David's a good friend of mine as well. I had no idea you're such a breath of fresh air, rarefied air. So I really think you're going to give a lot to my listeners because you gave an awful lot to me.
Someone asked me a few days ago, ironically, like, what would be your mantra right now? I don't think I've ever lived in a world of I have to. I live in the world of I get to.
Joining me today is Jackie Ryan. She's the CEO of Canadian Olympic Foundation. As well, she's the Chief Brand and Commercial Officer for the Canadian Olympic Committee. Jackie's one of the most respected and highly regarded executives in sport. Jackie, thank you for finding the time to join me on Chatter That Matters.
Well, gosh, thank you, Tony, for having me. Looking forward to the chat today and just love being here.
You have got to have one of the most rewarding jobs in Canada, because instead of just throwing things into the cloud, you actually see young Canadians compete, chase their dreams, and very often on the podium.
It's incredibly rewarding. I worked for an organization that's ultimately anchored in driving impact for Team Canada athletes, while also striving to inspire the next generation of Canadians. And so it's quite a privilege. It's also a privilege to partner with leading Canadian companies and business leaders like RBC.
I thought that I'd have you on to talk about Training Ground.
RBC Training Ground is a nationwide Olympic talent search program, also a funding program. And it's a really important program for the broader sports system and really helping these athletes pursue their Olympic dreams. It's entering into its 10th year. These athletes, they need dedication, commitment. They, of course, need the skill and athleticism, and they need funding. And there are so many stories, including Kelsey Mitchell, track cycling, gold in Tokyo; Jerome Blake, silver in Tokyo, gold in Paris in the 4x100; Avalon Wesley's rowing, gold in Tokyo, silver in Paris. The list is really, really long. It's also about inspiring the next generation of Team Canada athletes and helping them work towards their dreams. And I really think the success of these athletes on the podium really just inspires Team Canada fans across the country as well.
It's wonderful once every 4 years to celebrate these Olympians competing, but it takes a village to win a medal. And I would argue now more than anything else, it matters that we have a Team Canada, and we're showing Canadians that our identity is woven across this country in so many different ways, but also in the ways of the Olympians.
RBC's commitment to Team Canada, actually the story goes back 78 years ago in 1947, that literally the president of the Canadian Olympic Committee at the time called over to the president of RBC and said, "We can't get the team to the games. Can you help us out?" And that's what started the relationship. And it just hasn't stopped. And it's really, really quite a story. And anchor their sponsorship in the RBC Training Ground that we've talked about. They also have the Legacy RBC Olympians program, which has helped hundreds of current and retired Olympians in their athletic careers, and also in life after sport, which is a whole another area that's really important. So we're fortunate because we're not for profit. I don't know if you know that. So the Canadian Olympic Committee is a not-for-profit organization. Of those funds that come in, 70% of them go right back into the sports system. They're funding national sport organizations. They're funding On the Podium. They're funding the entire Olympic athlete journey.
How hard is it to convince a corporation that these dollars matter more than just even moving market share, that they actually matter in terms of the psychology of our country, the pride and the identity of our country, that, it might not attach to their brand and might attach to the brand, but to me, it's even bigger than a brand story, isn't it?
This investment coming from our corporate partners drives meaningful and direct impact. And I think a really good example of that is thinking back to COVID, and many organizations were having to look at their financial situation. And I can tell you that every single one of our marketing partners stuck with Team Canada. Not one left. They stuck with us. They renewed their investment in us. And from that came incredible success in Tokyo, Beijing, and in Paris this last summer. So ultimately, it works because our values are aligned. Our marketing partners are dedicated to supporting Team Canada, the Olympic movement, and they are because of the role that Team Canada plays in instilling national pride, as you mentioned, and because the impact of their investment, it's direct.
Jackie, I've known you for a long time. Your passion never diminishes, your energy. I can understand now how they've given you 2 titles, both the foundation and the Chief Brand Officer of the Canadian Olympics. I'm sure they're thinking about a 3rd one right now. I just really appreciate you taking the time and joining me in Chatter That Matters. I hope you listen to the show with Marion. She holds you and the Training Ground in the highest of regards. So I think that's a testament to money well spent.
Thank you, Tony. Really appreciate the opportunity, and big fan of Chatter That Matters. So happy to participate today.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chatter That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.